where it's very extremely difficult to establish what is eventually true, then yes, I would say any of those topics, any of the questions would be very much futile, and you don't have to come to a proper conclusion or to a proper conviction on what is actually the case. I would say, if we're talking about whether the Earth is flat or the Earth is spherical, um, it's very hard to actually not see that the Earth is clearly spherical. If you still want to be part of that discussion and conclude that the Earth is actually flat and not spherical, sure, yeah, go ahead and get to that conclusion. That's totally fine. However, it would be very much a stupid thing to do. I think it very much depends on the strengths of the arguments, the strength of the evidence, and all that. But the thing is, with God, with the existence of God and the truth of one religion over the other, it's not quite the same thing, is it? It's not obviously, one thing is not obviously true and or obviously false. It is very obviously true to you or obviously true to certain people, but it's not something that we can actually come together and demonstrate to be true and convince most of the room. Which is not the same for the shape of the Earth, for example. Even if there were 1,000 flat earthers walking around, if we gathered everyone in the same room with most people in the world, it would be quite easy to demonstrate why the fact that the world is spherical is simply significantly more convincing, and most people following the evidence would look at it and would think, okay, yeah, sure, that's clearly the truth. Obviously, you can't do the same thing with religion. You can't do the same thing with the existence of God. If it were so, you would have societies, you would have a science that is completely built on clearly demonstrating to people why it is objectively true that there is a God, and why objectively it is true that Christianity is true. And we could even fact check this. You could have fact checks showing that the evidence here and here clearly shows that God is true. And the average observer would be able to agree with that. We can't really do that. It depends very much on your subjective stance.
No, what you're saying is completely wrong. The point is you do not have societies where just massive populations are raised all their lives to believe in the flat Earth and so on. So the point is, imagine if you did, and like all of China was raised to believe that the Earth is flat. And you're talking about significance. Oh, but religious belief is so much more significant. That's true of what you would call expanded theism. If you're just talking about God creating the universe, an all-powerful, all-knowing, perfectly good being creating the universe, no, you're not even talking about heaven or hell or anything else. You're talking about whether there's a deity who created the universe. So there, in other words, the idea of this has to do, these are big issues of salvation and so on. Those are additional issues. We're talking about the existence of God. But you could have different parts of the world. Imagine this part of the world thinks that the Earth is triangular, and this part of the world thinks that the Earth is flat, and this part of the Earth thinks something else. And you have all these different areas, and they're all raised all their lives to believe something. And let's suppose that there are actually high stakes for this, because you're saying, oh, but these beliefs aren't as significant. Well, suppose they said, hey, if you get the answer wrong at some point, we're going to blow your brains out. If you don't know what the Earth is shaped like at some point, we're going to blow your brains out. So it's extremely life or death type situations. So you would have, this would be, according to you, similar to the situation of God. You have different people in different parts of the world. They believe all different kinds of things. And therefore, since you have different people in different parts of the world, and they believe different kinds of things, therefore, the correct position is just to be agnostic about the shape of the Earth. And the reason I would want to say that that's wrong is because it's going along the lines of what you were just saying. The people who believe in a round Earth have a better case. You have a better case. Guess what? Flat Earthers have a case. They have arguments. In fact, if you are not used to arguing with them, they are going to run circles around you. It's like a person who knows nothing about Islam talking to a Dawa guy. The Dawa guy will run circles around him. It's once you know some additional information that you can start to challenge him on it and so on. So my view is that the existence of God is actually like that. Yeah, you can have different people believing in different things in the world. You just have a way better case for God. And what you're going to say is, no, that's just because you were raised in this area or something like that. I'm saying, well, yes, you could. A flat Earth might be much more persuasive to a person in a certain area if he was raised to believe in that kind of thing.
But that's not my point.
That doesn't mean that there's not a stronger case for a round Earth than for
But that's not my point. The point is, imagine. Let me just put it like this: imagine you have a public debate on whether there is a God or not. If you had whether the Earth is round or not.
Mm-hmm.
If you had this public debate, one side that would be very unpopular in arguing that the Earth is actually flat. The other side.
Where? In a hypothetical country where the entire population is raised to believe that the Earth is flat.
Let's talk about the real situation that we are in right now. So, when there is a public debate on the shape of the Earth, the one side that argues that the Earth is round would be able to present endless pieces of evidence. You could have images. You could have observations. You could have independent, tests that you can conduct on your own with very little budget, actually, and so on, etc. So the average observer here of this debate, if they sat down,
what do you mean, average observer? Average observer from a country.
In today's time, the average observer in today's time.
Dude, in order to make a parallel with what you're saying, I'm saying imagine a hypothetical country where everyone is raised to believe in the flat Earth. If they are watching this debate, the people who are raised to believe in that sort of thing would be like, oh, wow, the flat Earth guy has a much better case because look at all his arguments. And the other guys, he's saying, oh, he's got his images and stuff, but that's all stupid. Our guy can explain all that stuff. It'll be convincing to them. My point is, just because a bunch of people don't believe in something, or just because a bunch of people are raised to believe in something different, that doesn't tell you whether there's a good case or not.
The fact that believing in a flat Earth was a very common thing in the past in different societies, but no longer is because it is quite easy in today's time to demonstrate that the Earth is definitely not flat.
Which societies? Do you have specific societies in mind?
I mean, we're talking about, for example, in even in Europe, in Western Europe, before the arrival of the Roman Empire, to set things straight.
That's a myth.
No, not that. I'm not talking about Christianity. I'm talking about the pre-Christian Europe, Nordic cultures, pre-Christian pagan cultures. For example, it was very common for them to believe that to believe in a different nature where the gods and the titans and the giants and all that fought and created this world. On a tree, in the Arab culture, in sub-Saharan African cultures, in the steppes of Siberia and so on, it was quite common to believe that the world is created on a giant, vast sea of water.
Why don't the people there still believe that? Why don't the people there still believe that?
Because it is a stupid idea, and it is quite easy to see, looking at the evidence, following the evidence, to come to the conclusion that obviously the Earth is.
In other words, just to be clear, suppose you have an area again, and let's suppose it's 1,000 years ago, and let's suppose that the people there are raised to be flat earthers, and you come in there and say, no, you got the shape of the Earth wrong. There might be some resistance. No, there would be some resistance to that. You might think that people are complete lunatics who are saying that the Earth is round or something like that. But what you would say is the reason it's not going to last over time is there's actually a better case for a round Earth than for a flat Earth. And therefore, over time, since you have this relentless influx of a better argument, the better argument is it's going to win over time. It doesn't mean that always the better argument is going to win or something like that. You just say, hey, if you have a significantly better case for this, that has an advantage, and that advantage will manifest itself over time. Can we say that?
Yes, but the issue here is here is the difference. That's what I'm trying to get at. So when we talk about specifically, I'm giving examples from today because if we have a debate on the shape of the Earth, you could give massive pieces of evidence, which would all be extremely convincing. Which is why the vast majority of people who view the case would come to the conclusion, yeah, okay, this is obviously we know the Earth is spherical. There is all the evidence. Who could deny it? You would have to be a little bit crazy and a little bit too skeptical and too cynical to deny time.
You're talking about a world where people now overwhelmingly believe
I
in a
know.
round Earth. I'm saying if you had a different kind of
course,
world, you're not going to find it convincing.
Of course, but let me get to the point. That's exactly the point. Because when we're talking about the shape of the Earth, it is very, very easy to demonstrate whether the Earth is spherical or not. You can easily demonstrate that the Earth is spherical. If we were talking about the existence of God, it simply is not like that. You will not have in a proper debate laid out clear evidence which would convince most people in the room looking at it that there is indeed a God, or that this certain religion is true. You can make solid arguments. You can make all of these arguments for God, but you see how those arguments are going. You see how those debates are going. I mean, let me just ask you. When there is a debate on whether God exists or not, do you think more than 5% of people who are watching actually change their opinion on the subject?
What I'm saying is that's irrelevant to me. It's not relevant how many people are going, because you're talking about the world right now. If you had 50% people who've been raised all their lives on the arguments of flat earthers, and 50% viewers who've been raised all their lives to believe in a round Earth, and you had a champion debater from each side, how many of the flat earthers do you think are going to change their minds and say, wow, these guys have a case? If you think it's a lot, you have not encountered these guys before. You have not encountered, again, these guys run circles around people. They do have arguments. I think it's fundamentally flawed. But when you have convinced flat earthers, especially people raised as flat earthers and believe their arguments and they follow this stuff, I don't think you are going to convince more than 5% of the people. If you had a debate, I don't think you would convince a bunch of the people. So again, now my perspective would be, I don't care. I don't care if these guys still believe in a flat Earth. There's obviously a much better case for this. Therefore, I'm going with that position. It doesn't matter if it wouldn't matter to me if everyone saw the debate and said, well, you know what? The Earth is flat. I would be fixed on the argument, saying, what are the actual arguments and what is the case that makes the most sense? You're saying that if a bunch of the people aren't going to be convinced by the other person's argument, therefore you should just remain agnostic. And I'm just, no, that's not
all right.
Thinking. And I don't think it's your thinking either. And I assume he's going to go on, well, yes, they're nice people, but it's still a bunch of silly, superstitious nonsense. Something along those lines. Is that about right? Is that an accurate prediction?
Alhamdulillah.
We'll see.
Yeah. But nevertheless, the stuff they believe is obvious nonsense. And you have to take the whole package, because when you talked about Jesus rising from the dead, you don't believe Jesus rose from the dead, surely.
I choose to believe that Jesus rose from the dead.
You choose.
Oh, snap. Okay. Check beside resurrection. What in your face, haters? It is interesting to me still. I choose to believe this. Now, there's a sense in which anytime you're believing something, you're choosing to believe it. But normally it's not your choice. You're just like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to decide to believe this. It's just you've been presented with something that is convincing. And so, wow, I actually I believe this. So the way she's describing it is a bit odd. But guys, I have to say, based on the first 13 minutes that we've watched, the full discussion is an hour. I would anticipate that we already see what the whole discussion is going to be like. It's going to be like, here's why I think this and this and this and that, and here's why I think that it's good for society. But surely that's a bunch of nonsense. You don't actually believe this nonsense, right? Because that sounds like nonsense to me. But she's kind of already answered that. Yes, if you don't believe in God, it's obvious nonsense. If you do believe in God, then it makes more sense. So I think that's pretty much, I think we've gotten the gist. We'll watch a little more, but I think we've gotten the gist of the discussion here.
Believe it.
Yes, and that is a matter of choice. And
it would be funny if she started going, aren't you pro-choice, Richard Dawkins? Don't I get to decide what to do with my body and my brain?
I think it has to go back to, is there something or is there nothing? And I think you start with, there is nothing. And yes, for years I agreed with you, there's nothing. But if you come round to the idea that there might be something much more powerful than we are, something that caused everything else, then something like Jesus rising out of the dead or these other miracles, Jesus being born out of a virgin, for that higher power is not a big deal. But again, it's a matter of choice, and it is just different planes of perception. And I think here on this plane of perception, having been a former atheist, I don't think this is something we're going to resolve tonight or agree on right now.
Well,
and so that is where I think it's
you know what my
more
problem
interesting.
with
What?
you know my problem with these with Richard Dawkins and atheists in this whole train is specifically this whole issue. When he says, for example, wait, you actually believe that Jesus rose from the dead? That shouldn't be a very crucial and critical question. That shouldn't be the question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't be the thing that you make a problem of, even as an atheist, because there is no reason why it wouldn't be, why it wouldn't happen, if you accept that there are indeed realities that are beyond your understanding, beyond your standards of science and nature and all that. If there is indeed the divine, as she mentions, it's not unreasonable. It's certainly not illogical that Jesus would have or could have died and risen from the dead. That's not an illogical position to hold. It doesn't. There's nothing contradicting that. It doesn't contradict itself, and it makes perfect sense within a reality where there is more than just the hard science that you accept. So this shouldn't really be the big objection that you come with. You shouldn't be like, wait, you actually believe Jesus? Yeah, you could believe that. Yeah. But you should probably tackle a different issue first. You should probably tackle the whole philosophy of God's existence, or evidence for God's existence, or for supernatural things, and so on. You shouldn't go with that. That's totally a wrong place to start, and it's illogical to me.
Yeah, I agree. So going from Richard Dawkins' actual perspective here is, hey, we've got this world, it's physical. You've got all this talk about supernatural stuff. It's a bunch of nonsense. And so when I'm talking to you, if I disagree with you, I'm going to point out something you believe that is miraculous in nature. And hey, given the fact that we live in a physical, material world, and so isn't that just nonsense? And it looks like he's just going to keep pointing out examples like that. And she's pointing out, well, if I believe in God and I don't believe that that this is all there is, I can come to different conclusions, right? And she's exactly correct. And so you're right that the actual he can't just assume that they're arguing as naturalists, because they're not. It's a theist now. She's a theist, and he's some sort of like metaphysical naturalist. And therefore, if he wanted to defend a position, he should be arguing that theism is false. And if theism were false, then then all of that stuff becomes silly nonsense. So yeah, I would agree with AP.